Today's guest is Shawn Khunkhun. He is the CEO of Dolly Varden Silver. And we're going to talk about gold. We're going to talk about silver. We're going to talk about the big move in commodities that is even getting more exaggerated and more pronounced as this geopolitical instability begins to really surface. So make sure you hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it. Give us a comment right there down below. We'll link Dolly Varden Silver website right there down below. And Shawn, it's good to see you.
Really good to see you, Jake.
It's been an interesting journey up and down, especially with silver because it's so volatile. And in a weird way, it has a supply and demand fundamentals like other commodities, but it moves very psychological. It's like after the lockdowns, everyone was afraid in March 2020, and there was so much fear and uncertainty, and silver took off. And then everyone kind of got lulled back to sleep. But now we're seeing the Fed just said inflation's now at 7.9% all over the world. It's at record highs. Everyone's starting to think again, maybe something's not right. And here we are in this moment. What's going on? And what is your expectation as it pertains to silver in an environment like this?
Great question. Just crazy times. Like I feel like, Jake, we talked about what was going to happen, and now it's happening. And so it's a little surreal. A couple things that come to mind. I was watching one of the big, I was watching CNBC, and they're talking about inflation, and they're talking about inflation is raging, and you've got 8% here and 7% there. And I thought it was transitory. Like I thought it was just going to come and go, and it had everything to do with the pandemic and bottlenecks and this inflation that's here and it's staying. And now we want to talk about Russia being the cause of this inflation. And it's like, but the inflation prints are January, they're February. The inflation was so it's really interesting. Listen, I'm a law-abiding, get in line. Like, even though I'm a free thinker, I'm vaccinated. Okay, like I try to comply with what people are doing generally and conform. And I'm even going, man, what happened to the pandemic? Because all I'm hearing about is Russia now, and we want to blame Putin for food prices that have been flying for years. And so we live in some crazy times in terms of silver and silver prices. Listen, I think silver, because of fear, because of inflation, and because of the green revolution, I think silver is where you want to be. And I'll tell you right now, I think it's the number one investment of our lifetime. And listen, I think gold's great and it's a store of wealth, but silver is going to just totally destroy it in terms of performance. And I see a future where you're going to see $300 silver. Like, it's coming. It's we're on that trajectory, and when it happens, it's going to happen quickly. I want to tell you one thing. So if I wanted to go out and buy an ounce of silver today in Canada, it cost me $40 an ounce to get one ounce. But the crazy thing is the dealer will only give me 30 to sell it to him, but he wants 40 to buy it. What a spread. I need to get into that racket.
That's fantastic. Well, it makes one of us that follows rules. I was laughing while you said that because today I have my "Don't Tread on Me" hat. And, one of the crazy things, I was laughing while you were saying all that because I was just looking at someone posted, how on social media, sometimes they'll do a collage of headlines from a bunch of different places that are all saying the same thing. And there was like 30 different news websites all saying Putin price hike. Clearly the memo of an exact slogan to use just went out. And you can see it all in the last 72 hours. Now it's Putin's price hike. And it's laughable. These people they're actually psychopathic liars. They're sociopaths.
I'm afraid now, though. I'll tell you right now. And I'm glad you talked about sociopath, because I had this great conversation with a friend yesterday about the sociopath, the psychopath, the narcissist, and we were just diving into that topic. But I just want to jump in here. I thought about this, and I thought, we had this trucker, gathering, this very peaceful gathering in Ottawa, and bank accounts were frozen. And now I'm watching. I was telling my wife, I was like, if I was Russian and I had some wealth, are they going to come get it? Because they're going into Manhattan, they're seizing properties, they're freezing bank accounts. They're doing today what they did to the truckers in Ottawa. And I thought about myself, and I thought, Jake, you and I are publicly talking about things that might not comply with what the rule planners want, to be the memos, right? The Putin price hike. And I thought about, is my bank account going to get frozen? Like, is that something that if I come out there and I talk about how people can protect themselves and how they can, insulate themselves from, inflation and, get a store of wealth like gold and silver, like, are we going to be censored and frozen? And it's a scary thought when you're starting to see it happen.
Yeah. They want us to be afraid because this is how they continue to divide and conquer. And the reality is, whoever you voted for, none of these people care about us, and they're going to continue to print. And I was talking to William Middlecope yesterday or the day before, and he was saying that his personal strategy is to divide into 25% of his wealth, 25% in real estate, 25% in gold and silver outside of the system, 25% into mining stocks, 25% into Bitcoin. And it's obvious that whether you're talking about these Russia, Canada, there's Americans that have had the MyPillow guy got debanked as well. This is something that's obviously occurring, and the only thing we can do, regardless of who you voted for, none of these people are going to save us. None of them are on our side. And then it moves to kind of two things. For me, one of those is leaving my wealth outside of the system in a capacity that's physical gold, physical silver. I own Bitcoin. And then another component of that is my wealth multiplier. And for me, that's mining stocks. And you're seeing these incredible things happening in commodities right now. Like all these things, they're like all going limit up. It's crazy. I mean,
Can I just jump on the Bitcoin thing for a second? You know what I think is dangerous? I'm seeing a lot of advertisements, and I'm seeing a lot of like mainstream, whether they're athletes or movie stars, start promoting these, hey, buy Bitcoins in your IRA, buy Bitcoins in your 401k. And I think it's quite dangerous because listen, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, like the top cryptos, solid. But some of these other coins, like they could go no bid. And it seems like there seems to be this funneling of the public into buying some of these coins at a very strong valuation at a pretty toppy point of the market. Now, like I'm not saying Bitcoin can't go to $100,000 a coin or $200,000 a coin or even beyond, but I just think it's really interesting that I think about gold and silver in the future when the silver price is $300, these same ads are going to be aired where they're going to say, hey, own silver in your, and you'll have, LeBron James doing like an ad about, man, I'm curling these silver bars,
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious a lot of these coins are exit strategies, as Max Kaiser said. Bitcoin is a similar value proposition if you really go down it as gold and silver bullion, in that it's the only true decentralized network. And if you take your coins off the exchange entirely, then it's no longer a third party. It's crazy to see there's 25,000 Coinbase wallets that were frozen in Russia, and that shows you when they hold your keys. There's a theme here. They are confiscating wealth by any means necessary, whether it's freezing bank accounts or printing money away. And this is why I think we're entering the mother of all commodities market, because they're printing so much money and they've distorted supply and demand so much that this is a golden opportunity, right? And I personally classify silver as a commodity from my investment perspective, because for one, I have bullion outside of the system, but silver as an investment to me follows the same commodity supply and demand in that you see across the board, whether it's they're saying they want all these electric vehicles, and then you do the math on lithium and you find out if every car on the planet was electric, that's more than all the known lithium reserves in the world. And then you do the same thing for silver and you're like, well, they're going to need more silver than all the silver that's mined annually every single year to go to this. Is that the big pitch behind when you look at all these problems in the world, but then you focus back on what you can control, which for you is a wealth acceleration vehicle with focusing on silver and silver mining stocks? Is the real value proposition to you that because of all this chaos, because of all this money printing, because of these supply chain distortions, because of this crazy government, silver is bound to be a beneficiary of it?
Yeah. So, for me, I'm a student of history. And so what I did is I went back and I looked at different times in history where the metals were relevant. If you look at a chart and you look at like mineral exploration activity, whether it's exploration, development, spending, you'll see spikes. You'll see a spike in and around 1929. You'll see a spike in and around 1980. Different times in history, 2011, price pushes spending. And so my thinking was, we're moving into this time in the world where you're going to have an acceleration of the inflation. And like you said, however they confiscate wealth, whether it's through rising prices, higher taxes, maybe straight up nationalization or freezing of assets, it's going to be a combination. You've got bail-in legislation for the big banks here in Canada. So my thinking was, look, keep it really simple, Shawn. So I went to Stewart, BC. I went up into the north part of northwestern BC, where at different times we went through some turbulence, whether there were wars, whether there were inflationary crises. I went to a place that's got a high concentration of minerals. And I went to a place where, and this was about 2 years ago, Dolly Varden was a $20 million company, $20 million bucks. That's the valuation. Today, it's a $200 million company under my leadership. So we've grown. But I think that depending upon where metal prices go, depending upon how much more silver I find, and we're not even into production yet. We're not even, we don't have earnings yet. So this is early days, but I look at where we can go. And so, my strategy has been build up a mineral inventory, because these ounces that I find in the ground, I can find them for cheaper than I can buy them. And I can find, hundreds of millions of them. And they're going to give myself and my investors, my shareholders, people like Eric Sprott, leverage to rising prices. And it's going to protect us. And at the right time, we'll either sell the company to a larger entity or we'll start producing the metal ourselves.
We've been talking about all this craziness in the world, and one of the ways they try to psychologically restore order is by keeping the price of commodities in check, whether that starts with precious metals and moves down the commodity supply chain. Because once you start having these cracks like we're having in the price charts of commodities, that's the psychological phenomena that happens in late stages of currency crisis. And one of the side effects of this control strategy they've been using with precious metals is, of course, if they have infinite money, they can just print the money and do these sell orders and smash the price down. And that's what they've been doing. And they've been caught a lot. But one of the funny things with that is maybe it works a little better with gold. I know gold is used in things, but silver is used a lot more in things. So when you distort the supply and demand fundamental by manipulating the price for that long, what happens is you've had this huge increase over the years in tech and industry, and now governments are all saying by 2030, by 2035, by 2040, everything's going electric. And you go, the price is going to have to be like over $100 just to bring everything online to do this. And here we are sitting at this price. What do you think about that, and how the paper selling of silver assets from a long-term perspective benefits somebody that you could be a bullion holder, but especially someone that is owns a silver mine or is investing in silver stocks through the long term.
Oh, 100%. Because you're going to get like a snapback effect where you're going to overshoot as a result of it. But just getting back to what you're saying about inflation and money printing, these rising prices are a symptom of the increase in the money supply. And I thought it was really interesting. People are celebrating this red hot housing market that's up 25%. Well, if you look at money supply increase since 2019, it's up, fill in the blank.
Right?
So it's like, everything's up 25, 40, some things are up 100%. And I think that in the case of silver, you're absolutely right. Like for me, it's so simple. You've got a certain amount of mine supply and, I'd say growing, but anywhere between like 20 to 30% of that is being gobbled up by guys like me and you who want physical silver, not because we're using it in industry, but because we see it as a store of wealth. We see it as money. And then 70% is being consumed. Whereas you look at something like gold, almost all of its consumption is for a store of wealth. And so silver, it's not getting recycled. And as 70% of it's getting consumed for industry. And the beauty with silver is, you take my cell phone, right? Or you take my monitor, there's maybe 1 ounce of silver that's being used on this desk. Well, my cell phone's like $1,500. It's a $1,500 cell phone. If the price of silver goes to $100 an ounce, it's not going to really make a dent in the price of my cell phone. So silver can go up to $300 an ounce before some of these consumer products, you really even feel the rise in it. So for me, from a limited supply to manipulated ship price to the fact that we can actually afford the price increase on these items, it all leads to actually it being okay for silver to get there. And just last thing I want to throw in, I was looking at a 50-year chart of silver to gold ratio. And we got down to 14 to 1 around 1980. 14 to 1. 14 ounces of silver getting you 1 ounce of gold. We've gone to around 30 twice, one in the mid 90s, one in around 2011. So it was 14 to 1, 30 to 1, 30 to 1. We got up to 125 to 1 2 years ago. And right now we're around 75 to 1. More sure than I am about anything else in this world, you're going to see it go lower, whether it's cut in half or whether it gets down to 10 to 1, 8 to 1. Like this is the biggest layup investment I've ever come across in my career.
Yeah, I agree with that purely from the perspective of the industrial use. And I know you guys had some big updates going on. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to ask you as a business person, when you own a silver company, you talked about, well, once we're in a point later, we'll either mine it or we'll sell it to someone else. And I've really enjoyed my conversations with Keith Neumeyer's probably done more for the silver industry from a business perspective than maybe anyone. And I was talking to him recently and he was saying, well, he every conversation, he alludes to it, but he was really going into the particulars of the supply and demand fundamentals, how much is used for EVs, and kind of laughing about it because I can see now from a business perspective, for me as an investor and a viewer as an investor, the volatility sometimes is hard to stomach. But when you have a 10 or 20 or 30 year time horizon, you see, oh my gosh, this is the perfect storm. And one of those things that he has predicted is that the industrial pinch will eventually get so severe that big companies, whether it's Apple, whether it's Tesla, whether it's EV companies, they're going to start trying to buy silver mines in the future to guarantee their supply. And I wonder, when you are looking out as a business person at 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road as an exit strategy, if you don't produce it yourself and you sell it, are you in that camp where you think that tech companies or big industry companies may eventually become players in silver mines in the same way that many of them are starting to step into other minerals and commodities?
100%. So my strategy has been, why sell the metal when we're not getting a good price? There's no incentive to build, to sell. So so when I started at Dolly, there was about 40 million ounces in the ground. Now we've got 140 million ounces. I've added 100 million ounces of silver in the last 2 years. And I want to get to a place where we have a lot more than that. Like, the next goal, my first goal was get to 100 million ounces. We got to 140. My next goal is to get to 300 million ounces. And what I had a call last week. It's funny you say this, right? So we're not a producer, right? I had a call with an end user last week from overseas, okay? And they were interested in making a strategic investment into the company because they're concerned about supply already. And we're not a producing mine. And so, my strategy is just to identify as many ounces as possible. To answer your question, 110%. You're going to have companies like Samsung, end users make strategic investments. And, you saw crypto start getting adopted by various large Fortune 500 companies. You're going to see large entities start coming in and taking strategic positions. And it's not just limited to silver. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing things I've never seen. I've been working in the mining business for 20 years. I'm seeing companies that own smelters start taking 20% share ownerships in exploration juniors, copper, zinc, gold, silver. So I don't think this phenomenon's limited to silver, but I just think that from the standpoint of where do you have the best upside from where it's trading now to where it's going, and that's silver. This is a 10x opportunity.
One other thing that Neumeier was saying to me that I thought was really interesting was he was saying on this subject that when industry gets involved heavily, which maybe it's a little bit more frowned upon with silver versus other commodities due to silver being more tied into the illusion of the stability of fiat currencies. But once industry gets involved, there's going to be a massive decoupling from the exchanges because for many reasons. And that he thinks that's when the price, maybe who knows where it is. Let's just do totally hypothetical numbers for everyone listening. I'm not saying that this is where the price is going to go. And I'm not saying Keith said this. But let's just say through all of this craziness, silver's at $100 in 5 years or 10 years. Then you have this huge push for this electrification of the world. And then that's when companies start to go, oh man, it's at $100. There's some, the everyday bullion buyers increased their buying by 10%. We need to secure mines. And then you see a decoupling, and that's when the price goes parabolic and moves like a commodity instead of moving like a precious metal. Do you see something like that, a decoupling in the future from this paper price? And how much weight do you give to that thesis, knowing that you're already getting calls from end tech users as a company that isn't even freaking mining yet? What do you think about that?
I do. And listen, I don't want to put a calendar on it, but I actually, for the first time in my life, think it's a lot more imminent than, your tone might suggest. Like, and I've never been one of these guys. I hated the guys that were like, oh, it's Friday, this Friday. But I actually feel like it is like literally around the corner this time. And look what just happened to nickel on the LME, right? And I just think that I see it playing out more like I saw nickel, where it's like this temporary halt and you go, you know what, this paper market is not real. So we're just going to go to, there's no digital market, there's no paper market, there's just the one physical market. And so initially, I think what will happen is you may only see like a 25% increase in price, because you got to remember, there is some stockpiles. There are some people that could bring some silver online and satisfy some initial demand, but then I think what you're talking about. So I think what you see play out first is just the failure of the futures market as we know it. And then that second event is what you're describing happens. And that's where the price goes parabolic. And so the way I look at my silver and my gold, I don't own so much of it. I own just enough of it that I don't have to part with it. So whatever I own, like I never have to part with. That's like, so it's, I don't have a lot.
You're talking about your physical.
My physical. Yeah, my physical. So my physical, it's like, this is something that I don't care whatever the price I get for it, because when absurd prices come, I think it's the death of whatever that currency is. And I don't want to part with something that's worthless. I'm not going to think $300 is a good price if it could be 10,000 a week later. Like, so I just won't part with what I own physically. But the real leverage is in the companies, right? And you start at the top. You start with the royalty companies, the producers. A company like Dolly Varden is at the bottom of the list because it's not a royalty company. It's not a First Majestic. It's not one of the big producers, right? But it's also the reason that I've seen already silver goes up 1%, my shares go up 3%. And it's like, so you get that outperformance. It also cuts both ways. Silver goes down 1%, we go down 3%, right? So it does cut both ways. But, I look at some of these prices like Keith's company, First Majestic, in Canadian dollar terms, it was down at $12 in January, $12 a share. And like the previous January was like $30 a share. And you look at like how much, you look at Keith's presentations every year, he's growing the business. He's growing like the amount of money the company's making, the amount of mineral reserves. The guy knows how to identify assets. He knows how to buy them and sell them. Like you can just buy First Majestic and forget about it, right? And so you're right. He's done more for this industry, and he's been doing it. And he's been doing it, with tenacity, and he's been doing it like in a very stoic way. And when I started, he was doing it. And he's a great example to people like myself on, be a leader. And so my way, like, because I'm not a producer, I couldn't do what Keith does. Keith holds back sales. He holds back supply when the price is down, and then he sells it. And I took a lesson from him, and I said, we're just going to grow. We're going to grow that inventory. Let's not even think about selling it. Let's just grow. And then for me, it's not even about selling it. It's about identifying a company like his, and then he's got some peers that are really strong, and working with them to unlock it and let them develop it, right? And I think that'd be the best thing for our shareholders.
Yeah, absolutely. So, give me an update on what's going on, with Dolly Varden. I know you're one of my conversations that I really enjoy having when I'm talking to executives of companies, because you've got a lot of energy. You're very goal oriented, and you're very much about making it happen. And it's been fun to watch the progress of what you've been doing from our conversation. So give me an update on where you're at right now.
I just want to tell you a quick story real quick. So I'm coaching my daughter's, she's 10, her soccer team. And like the girls always win. And then this one Sunday we go out and we're down like 7-0 at halftime. And it's super uncharacteristic for these girls. Like they always win. So we're down 7-0. And I just said to them, I said, look, you know what? Look, I'm going to go talk to the referee, and we're going to start the game at 0-0. And it's like, they won the first half, but we're going to win the second half. Okay. So it's 0-0. And they're like, really? We can do that? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to talk.
How much did you pay the ref?
No, I didn't even talk to the ref. I actually went over there and said, hey, you're doing a great job. And then I came back and I said, yeah, he's onside. So, and then I went back to them and I said, do you guys want to know the secret? Like, do you want to know the secret to soccer? And it's also the secret to life. And they're like, yeah, like, tell me the secret. And I'm like, if you want the ball, just go get it. Like, that's all you have to do. So Jake, we went out and we put up 5 goals in the second half, and the other team scored 1. Like, we almost actually came back and legitimately won the game, but we won the half, 5-1. And anyways, like all I'm doing at Dolly is I'm just going to get that ball. Like, and I've learned that in life. Like that's all I'm doing. And so I put together a really smart team. Like, listen, I'm a marketing guy. I transfer wealth. I transfer wealth from investors, right? And I transfer it, but I give it to smart scientists that can unlock it, and they create value. They create wealth by going out, making a discovery, identifying an ounce in the ground that's got a value to it. And once it gets produced, it's going to even have a greater value. So I'm just a conduit, right? I'm just out there leading a team, communicating a message. But what I've done is I acquired a neighboring property and it's done. We've completed the transaction. So now we've unified and we've consolidated this mining camp in one of the most prolific belts in the world, where big companies are buying little companies all the time. And the next step is I just put up a financing. I'll close. I think I'm going to close like 13 million bucks. We've got 15 million in the bank. So we'll have a little bit of money for a small company, right? We'll have, call it $25 million net. So we'll have $25 million, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to hit it really hard and try to make more discoveries. And the one thing that I've showed my shareholders, as we've gone from 25 cents a share, I think we're trading at about 85 cents a share now. And the company's market cap has grown from 20 million to 200, and the treasury's grown from nothing to, we've got a little money in the bank. We've got a great team. The next step is to continue along that path of growing that mineral inventory. It's now ticked up from 40 to 140. The next step is to try to take it to 300. And ultimately, if somebody came along to me tomorrow and said, hey, Shawn, you know what? We want to develop this project. We've been mining for a long time. We've got the expertise. We've got the cash flow. And there's a big premium for our shareholders. And we thought that company was going to continue to rise. I would consider it. I'd take the deal to my shareholders. And Jake, I just try to do the next right thing that's in front of me. And that's putting the company in a position to win. And so it's just all about growing ounces, either through discovery or acquisition, and ultimately trying to make my shareholders money, period.
When you see this type of a lack of fair market valuation in silver, and you see what other commodities are doing, and then you look at the projections of the growing demand for silver, do you feel a sense of urgency as a mining executive to take as much advantage as you can while these prices remain below $30, because you know that this isn't going to last?
Yes. And I particularly looked at like something like the tech sector. And some of the valuations we saw there going into the end of last year. And then I think about, we've already seen silver move from $16 or $17 to $26, right? So that, like, we are, even though it doesn't feel like it, we're actually in the early stages of a bull market. And so what I have to really balance, though, is doing accretive deals. So growing in a way where it's not dilutive. So it's a bit of a balancing act. But now that I've got 140 million ounces under inventory, it represents like a pretty significant, it puts me up there into being one of the premier projects in terms of size, grade, location. So I'm less desperate to grow at all costs, but if the right like, let's say we get into a situation where the Fed is bent on raising rates and contracting QE, and let's say we get into a situation where we get a big nasty correction, and silver is viewed less as a precious metal and more as an industrial metal. And let's say that these big moves we've seen in commodities come back a little bit. Well, we'll be in a position with our treasury and our team to take advantage of any opportunities if they're there, if they're accretive, right? If I can buy an ounce of silver for 10 cents an ounce in the ground, and I know in bull markets it's going to be valued at $3.30, I'll do that deal all day long. And so to answer your question, I'm pretty content with what we have. And I think there's going to be a lot of organic growth on our project, but my eyes are always open to other opportunities.
What's your expectation moving forward for the markets, the price of silver? It's March 2020 right now. I think yesterday the Fed's new inflation numbers came out at like 7.9%. They're talking about raising rates. I mean, perhaps they'll raise them 25 basis points just to satiate people, so all trust isn't lost in their word. But whether it's bailout money to Ukraine, bailout money to these banks that have huge stakes in Russia, whether it's more COVID relief. I mean, it seems like we're getting ready for the next hockey stick move up in the Fed's balance sheet and the United States debt and global government's debt. So what's your expectations for silver here and the broader markets and money printing?
Well, that's a great question. I think silver, gold's made a nice move. You go back 2 years and it's gone from 1,300. It's broken out. We saw it in U.S. dollars just trade at its all-time high or within dollars of it here just this week. So we've got gold flirting as high as 2,070. It's just under 2,000 today. If you look at silver, so let's go back to that 2020 move in gold where gold went to 2,000. Silver made a 50% move in a matter of weeks. So it gives me a lot of confidence that the gold market is not topping yet because silver hasn't done that outperformance it will do in the final leg of the market. So I think, I think silver's downside is so limited and the upside's big. I haven't seen a year where gold started the year and ended the year up more than 25%. So I think, that doesn't mean we can't go to like $2,300 or $2,400, at which point I think you'd get silver going into the 30s, maybe as high as $42 an ounce, which if you go back to January of 2021 and look at what First Majestic was trading at $30 a share based on $30 silver. So you can see like a tripling of large silver stocks. So I think silver is going to have a tremendous year. I think it's going up. I think it'll end the year higher than it is today. But the big story is sometime in the next 18 months, you're going to see $60 to $75 silver on its way to 300. And I think, we're going to see a long-term gold price of like $3,500 an ounce average, but you'll probably get a spike up to like $8,000 or $9,000 along the way. Those are my targets. And some people might call me nuts, but I'll go on record saying, I think you're going to see an average gold price in the future of $3,500. It's all relative though. You're going to see like the cost to produce an ounce, like the margins are probably going to be the same, right? But I think for silver, that's why I think I'm so bullish on silver. I think the big upside is for silver. And yeah.
Awesome. So let me know any final things I missed, any last updates on Dolly Varden Silver. I appreciated the conversation. I personally thought it was my favorite one that you and I have had.
Oh, I appreciate that. Listen, you just getting together with you and talking, it's awesome. Like I really enjoy it. And the only final thought is I just say, look, my company's performed pretty well at a time where my peers, some of them have performed great. Like you look at a company like Vizsla Silver that you're very familiar with, like they've knocked it out of the park. They're an outlier, but most companies haven't performed that way, right? Mm-hmm. Most of my peers are flat, right? Or down. Down. And so Dolly's done really well. Mm-hmm. And I think that companies like Vizsla, companies like Dolly, companies that can perform well before things get really interesting are ones that are going to like explode to the upside in the future. They have the ounces, they have the goods. Actually, speaking of Vizsla, those drill results they just put out a couple of days ago were phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And, so hats off to Mike and his team there. They're doing a great job. And there's a few of these companies that are the real deal and are going to, are the place that you want to hang if you're an investor.
Yeah, you guys are following the same model as Vizsla. Wasn't that long ago they were, a tiny little market cap and trading a lot lower than where you guys were, and you guys are following that same trajectory. You realize where the price is going to go. you and Mike have the same thesis, you have the same long-term understanding, and then you're focusing on what's your greatest asset. And your greatest asset is to continue to build these resources on the expectation that you're going to see a significant revaluation in silver. And then you guys have whether it's big mining companies, whether it's tech companies, you guys are going to have what people need, right?
You know what? That is probably the biggest compliment you can give me, considering what I know how you think of Mike and Vizsla. And I think the other similarity there is Mike's got somebody like Craig Perry, a very smart scientist, a very savvy.
Craig's a genius, and he's so underrated. He doesn't do a lot of media, so like nobody knows how accomplished Craig is.
I got to bump into him at this Metals Investor Forum yesterday, and he's just such a gentleman. And I've got my own version of Craig Perry on my team, which is Rob McLeod, who is just a brilliant scientist, has sold a lot of companies to majors. And so, Mike and myself have the fortune of that mentorship and that guidance by these guys who've been there, they've done it. They've got that, they're unicorns, right? And so we're aided by that guidance. And then we're backed by some wonderful people like Eric Sprott, who are going, guys, I'll get behind you. And this is why I'm here. And like to have a supportive shareholder that doesn't sell, that when you need money to advance your business, he gives it to you and is just constantly supporting you. You put those things together, and a couple of hardworking guys like myself, Mike and myself, and it could lead to a win.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Shawn, appreciate you coming on. For everyone listening, we'll link the Dolly Varden Silver website right there down below. I'll link their socials as well, so you can check them out in the description right there down below. Let us know what you think of today's episode. Give us a comment down below that says "Go Silver, Go." Congratulations, Shawn, on closing the deal on your new property. And the last time we spoke, you were working on it. So congratulations on making that happen.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, Jake.
Absolutely. So thanks you for everyone listening today. Make sure you hit that subscribe bell notifications, what notifies you for new episodes. And be sure to check out Dolly Varden Silver. And we want to thank Shawn Khunkhun again for coming on today.